Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Sophie in the Saddle by Dick King Smith. Chapter 5. The Rescue. Sophie's words seemed to have calmed Bumblebee, who was as quiet and sheep-like as you could wish for the rest of the ride. Afterwards, Sophie's mother found her standing with her back to a long looking-glass, peering round at her reflection. "Whatever are you doing?" she asked. "Joe's mum said I had a good seat," said Sophie, "so I was just looking at it." Her mother laughed. "She meant you sat naturally on a horse," she said. "And so you did. Some people ride like sacks of potatoes, but I think you're going to be a good horsewoman." "Horse child," said Sophie. "How did you get on?" her father said when he came back. "I got off," said Sophie. "She fell off," said her mother, "but she got straight on again." "That's my girl," said Sophie's father. "Small you may be, but determined you certainly are." After that, the holiday developed a pattern. Sophie had her riding lessons first thing after breakfast. Then they all spent the day together on the beach. At first, Sophie had tried to persuade them to go to a different, dawn-free beach, but they said no. This was the nicest and the nearest, and anyway, with a bit of luck, Dawn and her parents might go somewhere else. Which they must have done, because although Sophie went off scouting each morning along the sands in disguise, that is to say, wearing her mother's dark glasses and with a sun hat pulled well down, there was no sign of them. "She must have read my notice," said Sophie to Puddle. Puddle was blissfully happy. Everything about the holiday suited him, down to the ground. At night he slept in Sophie's room, supposedly in his basket, but actually on her bed. Then there was the farm, with all its exciting sounds and smells, and his friends, the 2 collies. And lastly, there was the sea, that lovely, great, watery paradise into which he plunged on any excuse, and in which he swam tirelessly about, looking, with that black patch over one eye, the perfect pirate dog. In general, he behaved very well, but he did have one bad habit. He would stand in front of anyone on the beach who was playing with a ball or a frisbee and yap at them. What he was saying was as plain as could be. "My family aren't throwing sticks for me just at the moment, so why don't you throw that ball or that frisbee, and I'll bring it back to you, and we can have a lovely game." Very occasionally, some stranger would take notice of this request, but mostly people told him to buzz off, or else someone in Sophie's family would call him back to them. But one morning, in the second week of the holiday, Puddle had wandered a little further than usual along the beach, when he came upon a girl in a bright pink bathing dress, with golden hair done in bunches, tied with a green ribbon. Dawn was sitting on the sand, midway between the big sticking-up rock where her parents were and the sea. She was playing with a Cindy doll that was almost a miniature of herself, bunches and all. And Puddle rushed up to her with a volley of barks that said, "Chuck it for me! Go on, chuck it, and I'll bring it back, or I might chew it a bit. It looks good enough to chew. Go on, chuck it. Dawn was terrified. She was nervous of dogs anyway. And now suddenly, out of nowhere, had come this strange, noisy, piratical terrier, whose mouth every yap showed was full of sharp, white teeth. She leaped to her feet and fled. For Puddle, this all added to the fun, and he gave chase, bouncing like a rubber ball beside her and snapping at the Cindy doll, till Dawn, bleating, "Mummy! Daddy! Help!" tripped and fell. At this point, Sophie appeared, plodding along in search of Puddle, only to see him apparently attacking a fallen child. Then everything happened at once. Puddle, trying madly to grab the doll in his jaws, suddenly received a hefty slap from Sophie and heard a furious shout of, "Stop that, you bad dog, and get away!" and ran off. Dawn's mother and father, rushing to the rescue, saw only that their precious daughter had been saved from a savage dog attack by a stocky, dark-haired, and apparently fearless little girl. And Dawn, once she had stopped howling, saw Sophie. Sophie's face was a picture. Fancy going to the help of that wimp, Dawn. If only she'd realized in time, she wouldn't have slapped poor Puddle. She'd have encouraged him. All he was trying to do was to chew up that revolting Cindy doll. She turned to go back and make it up with the now distant Puddle, when Dawn's father said, "That was very brave of you, young lady." "Brave?" said Sophie. "Yes, rescuing my little girl from that vicious dog." "He's not," began Sophie, at the same time as Dawn said to her mother, "It's Sophie from school." "Sophie?" said Dawn's mother in horrified tones, remembering their first meeting when, after the squashing of the wood louse, Sophie had taken Dawn's toy pony Twinkletoes and solemnly jumped up and down on it until it was a dirty, squashed lump. "From the same school, are you?" said Dawn's father. "Well, well, it's a small world. Fancy you two friends meeting so far from home." "She's not," began Dawn and Sophie at the same time. But Dawn's father, who obviously liked the sound of his own voice, continued. "Now then, young lady, we're very grateful to you for what you did. Our Dawn might have been badly bitten by that nasty, vicious brute, and so might you." "But," said Sophie. "No buts," said Dawn's father, and he put his hand in the pocket of his shorts and took out 2 one-pound coins and held them out to Sophie. "Here," he said. "I should like you to accept these. They'll buy you a few ice creams. And once again, many thanks for what you did." "Yes, thank you," said Dawn's mother rather unwillingly. "Dawn, what do you say to Sophie?" "Thank you," said Dawn very unwillingly. Sophie took the coins. She opened her mouth and then shut it again. Then she said, "Thanks," and plodded off. Afterwards, everyone fell about laughing when she told them what had happened. "Dawn's father gave you 2 quid, cried Matthew. "For rescuing her from Puddle," cried Mark. "But surely he wasn't trying to bite her," said Sophie's mother. "No, he was trying to get her beastly Cindy doll." "Tell us again," said her father, "what they called him." "A nasty, vicious brute," said Sophie. She cuddled Puddle. "You're a very good boy," she said, "and I'm sorry I slapped you." Talk about getting money under false pretenses, said her father. You really should have told them he was your dog. He isn't. He's ours. Well, ours then. I tried, said Sophie, but they wouldn't listen. So I thought, well, that's another £2 for my farm money. Every little helps. As the old lady said, added Matthew, when she peed in the sea, ended Mark.